Satya Nadella ist so eine Art Superstar unter den Konzernchefs. Der Manager steht nicht nur an der Spitze von Microsoft, er hat selbst maßgeblich dazu beigetragen, dass der Windows-Konzern heute noch in der Top-Liga der wertvollsten Konzerne weltweit mitspielt. Denn wir erinnern uns, als Nadella 2014 seinen Posten antrat, kämpfte Microsoft gegen den Abstieg. Die PC-Verkäufe fielen, die Smartphone-Revolution hatte Microsoft verpasst. Ja, und dann kam Nadella, setzte auf Cloud, setzte auf KI und ganz konkret auf OpenAI. Der Aktienkurs hat sich seitdem verachtzehnfacht. Warum das wichtig ist? Während die Technologie-Riesen weiter Hunderte Milliarden in KI-Infrastruktur investieren, mehren sich die Zweifel. An künstlicher Intelligenz im Allgemeinen und an Nadellas Wette im Speziellen. An den Börsen macht sich diese Nervosität schon bemerkbar. Aus gutem Grund. Sollte der Hype um KI wie eine Blase platzen, würde das zahlreiche Unternehmen auf der ganzen Welt mitreißen. Warum hält Nadella an seinen Investitionen fest? Wie blickt er auf die bisher oft enttäuschenden Produktivitätseffekte von KI? Und wie navigiert er seinen Konzern dabei durch eine Zeit, in der US-Präsident Donald Trump für zusätzliche Unsicherheit in der Wirtschaft sorgt? All das konnte mein Kollege Felix Holtermann ihn persönlich fragen. Er ist seit 4 Jahren US-Korrespondent für das Handelsblatt in den USA und hat den Microsoft-Chef jetzt zu einem Podcast-Interview getroffen. Und bevor wir gleich in das Gespräch reinhören, fragen wir ihn mal, wie das war. Hallo Felix.
Hallo Larissa.
Felix, du bist jetzt seit 4 Jahren in den USA. Du hast viele große Interviews geführt und viele wichtige Manager getroffen, zum Beispiel den OpenAI-Chef Sam Altman, Dario Amodei von Anthropic. Du hast den PayPal-Gründer Peter Thiel gesprochen und jetzt Satya Nadella. Sag uns mal, wie einfach oder schwierig war es denn im Vergleich, dieses Interview zu bekommen?
Es war sicher eins der schwierigsten Interviews, zumindest meiner journalistischen Karriere bisher. Ich habe vor 2 Jahren, knapp im Dezember 2023, habe ich den globalen Microsoft-Pressechef, Frank Shaw heißt der, in New York getroffen auf einem Café. Und damals haben wir zum ersten Mal länger darüber gesprochen, dass ich ins Silicon Valley wechsle und dass ich gerne mal mit Satya Nadella sprechen würde. Ja, und schwuppdiwupp, 2 Jahre später hat es dann geklappt. Also es war eine ewig lange Vorbereitung mit Aberdutzenden Gesprächen, Hintergrundrunden davor, mehrmaligen Verschiebungen. Dass es wirklich klappt, das habe ich allen gesagt, das habe ich erst geglaubt, als er dann plötzlich neben mir stand, auch noch 5 Minuten zu früh. Ich habe noch am Vorabend gedacht, bei so jemandem, da kann es immer sein, am Ende du kriegst 10 Minuten früher eine SMS, sorry, National Security oder was auch immer. Es findet nicht statt.
Ja, und dann hast du so eine Möglichkeit, auf die du so lange gewartet hast, auf die du dich lange vorbereitet hast. Und du hast 30 Minuten Zeit. Wie bereitest du dich auf so ein Interview vor?
Das ist tatsächlich das Hauptproblem. Du hast es angesprochen. Man hat wahnsinnig wenig Zeit. Ganz ursprünglich hieß es 20 Minuten. Wir haben uns davor einige Minuten unterhalten und dann ging das auch schon los. Das heißt, es gab jetzt auch keine mögliche Chance davor, eine Art von persönlicher Beziehung aufzubauen. Man sitzt dann da, man Backtimed, so nennen wir das ja im Journalismus. Also man hat letztendlich sein iPhone vor sich, da läuft eine Stoppuhr. Man hat seine Fragenliste vor sich. Das waren bei mir 4 ausgedruckte DIN A4-Seiten. Man hört dem anderen zu, man muss schauen, dass man ja auch irgendwie schlaue Nachfragen stellt, beziehungsweise nicht nur seine Fragenliste abspult und währenddessen tickt die Uhr und man wird immer nervöser. Ich wusste am Ende überhaupt nicht, ist das Ganze jetzt eigentlich gut geworden oder nicht.
Viel mehr noch, es ist ein wirklich spannendes Gespräch geworden. Ich durfte ja schon reinhören. Ich kenne das selbst im Gespräch, vor allem mit Managern von US-Konzernen. Das sind oft Leute, die sehr, sehr gut vorbereitet sind auf solche Situationen. Die haben etliche Male trainiert, wie man Interviews führt. Die wissen auch ganz genau, welche Fragen sie nicht beantworten wollen, beziehungsweise anders beantworten wollen. Welchen Eindruck hat denn Nadella auf dich gemacht? Hat der deine Fragen wirklich angehört und individuell darauf reagiert? Oder hattest du das Gefühl, naja, wenn du jetzt auch schon mal mehrere Podcasts mit ihm gehört hast, ihn vielleicht im Radio gehört hast, im Fernsehen, das hat er alles schon mal woanders gesagt?
Ja und nein, würde ich sagen. Also Nadella ist jemand, der tatsächlich zuhört. Er betont ja immer wieder, er kommt ja ursprünglich aus Indien, seine Mutter war Sanskrit-Lehrerin. Er betont zum Beispiel in seiner Biografie Hit Refresh immer wieder, dass ihm Empathie sehr wichtig ist, dass er ein Manager ist, Der versucht, anderen zuzuhören. Und ich habe mit vielen gesprochen in seinem Umfeld, die ihn gut kennen und die bestätigen das. Nadella ist jemand, der zuhört. Den Eindruck, den hatte ich auch im Gespräch. Er hat wirklich auf meine Fragen gehört. Er hat verstanden, wo ich hinaus möchte. Man hat bei Nadella sowieso immer das Gefühl, dass er eigentlich schon gedanklich 3 Schritte weiter ist. Er ist aber, und das muss man dazu sagen, natürlich auch ein Vollprofi. Das heißt, er antwortet auf die Fragen. Aber dass ein Satya Nadella sich verhaspeln würde, dass er sich versprechen würde oder dass der irgendetwas sagt, was auch nur im geringsten er nicht vorher schon mal gegengecheckt hat, wo er in seinem eigenen Kopf schon mal eine kleine Due Diligence gemacht hat, ob das gut ist oder schlecht für seinen Konzern, wenn er das sagt, das sollte man nicht erwarten. Ich würde sogar so weit gehen zu sagen, von den großen Tech-Riesen ist Nadella in der Kommunikation der Stärkste. Ich nenne mal 2 ganz kurze Beispiele, wenn ich darf. Erstens, vor 2 Jahren, fast auf den Tag genau vor 2 Jahren, ist Sam Altman gefeuert worden vom Verwaltungsrat von OpenAI. Da wussten wir ein langes, banges Wochenende gar nicht, gibt es das Unternehmen am Montag noch. Wir haben beide damals dazu berichtet, wir haben beide damals uns verschiedene Nächte um die Ohren gehauen, Larissa, wir wissen es noch ganz genau. So. Es gibt genau ein Interview, das war damals bei Bloomberg, wenn ich mich richtig erinnere, mit Satya Nadella. Das waren 10 Minuten, da hat die Welt drauf geschaut. Was sagt jetzt der Microsoft-Chef? Was sagt der größte Investor in OpenAI, der gerade im Übrigen Altman angeboten hatte, komm doch zu uns, der hier bei der LinkedIn-Zentrale der Microsoft-Tochter in San Francisco schon eine Etage freigeräumt hatte für Altman und sein Team. Der geht also bei Bloomberg auf den Sender und der ist ruhig, der ist überlegt. Jeder einzelne Satz von ihm macht Sinn, zumindest auf den ersten Blick, wenn man zuhört. Es klingt alles super und am Ende gehen alle aus dem Gespräch raus. Es gibt hier eine Kernschmelze bei OpenAI. Man hat das Gefühl, Mensch, einer, der hat ja alles im Griff. Das ist Satya Nadella. So ist er. Und so ist er auch in dem Gespräch. Und das zweite Beispiel ist natürlich Donald Trump. Es gibt ein Thema hier in den USA, dass selbst den Chef des aktuell drittwertvollsten, im Sommer war er mal der wertvollste Konzern der Welt, dass den umtreibt, wo er aber extrem aufpassen muss, was er sagt. Das sind alle Fragen zu Donald Trump. Wir haben ihn zum Beispiel gefragt zum Ende von Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. Ein Thema, was Nadella laut seiner Biografie extrem wichtig ist, weil er ja auch aus Indien in die USA gekommen ist, weil er hier selbst gesehen hat, wie schwierig es auch ist, gerade aus einer Minderheit heraus auch hier an die Spitze aufzusteigen. Und jetzt haben wir dann einen neuen Präsidenten, der sagt Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, also letztendlich Vielfalt, Teilhabe, auch insbesondere von Minderheiten, von Frauen, ist gar keine Minderheit, am Arbeitsmarkt und vieles andere mehr. Das wollen wir nicht mehr. Dann habe ich ihn gefragt, geht das nicht gegen alles, wofür du eigentlich als Person, als Mensch und als Manager stehst? Das ist eine Frage, die würde andere vielleicht in Schlingern bringen. Satya Nadella antwortet auch darauf sehr, sehr smart.
Ja, und du hast ihn auch kritisch gefragt, natürlich zur Frage, gibt es eine KI-Blase, ja oder nein? Wird sie platzen, ja oder nein? Er blickt da sehr weit in die Zukunft und rechnet aus, was oder wie lange es auch dauern kann, bis die Produktivitätsgewinne zu sehen sein werden. Inwiefern denkst du, das ist politisch, wie er antwortet, diplomatisch? Natürlich, da kann auch ein Satya Nadella jetzt nicht sagen, natürlich ist es eine KI-Blase und wenn die nächste Woche platzt, ist es ein Drama für Microsoft. Der will ja seine eigenen Investoren nicht unsicher machen oder verunsichern. Wie viel davon, glaubst du, ist wirklich seine feste Überzeugung?
Ja, ich glaube, auch da hat er extrem diplomatisch geantwortet, aber keine fabulierenden Geschichten erzählt, sondern sozusagen eine Erzählung, die aus Microsofts Sicht sehr freundlich, sehr positiv für den Konzern ausfällt. Was hat er denn nämlich gesagt, wenn wir mal einen großen Strich drunter machen, seine Antwort auf die Frage? Erstens, ich habe ihn ja gefragt, was passiert denn eigentlich mit der Wirtschaft, was passiert mit Microsoft? Was Nadella letztendlich sagt, ist erstens, wir müssen über den Tag hinweg schauen, wir müssen die ganz lange Frist einnehmen. Das heißt schon mal, so übersetze ich das, naja, natürlich kann beim Platzen einer solchen Bewertungsblase, natürlich kann es sein, dass da Startups, dass da neue Firmen links und rechts pleite gehen. Das sagt Nadella so gar nicht, das schwingt da aber mit. Er hat die ganz lange Frist. Er denkt an die Wirtschaft, an die Gesellschaft von übermorgen. Und er sagt ganz klar zweitens, für Microsoft heißt das, dass sich vielleicht für uns gar nicht so viel ändert. Weil, so argumentiert er, Microsoft schon heute wahnsinnig große Umsätze und auch Gewinne, Profite mit künstlicher Intelligenz macht. Warum? Microsoft bietet ja nicht nur Chatbots an, also sozusagen die Schaufeln der künstlichen Intelligenz der Revolution, sondern Microsoft ist auch eine ganz große Fabrik für Schaufeln. Ja, was heißt das? Microsoft hat seine Azure-Datenzentren, seine Rechenzentren, die sind schon heute ausgebucht von anderen Unternehmen, die mit künstlicher Intelligenz, mit KI Geld verdienen wollen. Und was Nadella sagt, ist letztendlich, In der Zukunft wird der Anteil von KI, der Anteil von Technologie am Bruttoinlandsprodukt, am Sozialprodukt, der wird weiter steigen. Laut seiner Sicht erleben wir eine komplette Änderung, eine Transformation unserer Wirtschaft und Gesellschaft statt künstliche Intelligenz. In der Pole Position ist da Microsoft und deswegen kann es ihm und seinem Konzern relativ egal sein, wenn da eine Blase platzt oder nicht, weil er sich hier sozusagen mitten in einem welthistorischen oder sagen wir mal technologischen Prozess befindet.
Und ganz am Ende hast du ihn wahrscheinlich auch ein bisschen überrascht mit einer sehr persönlichen Frage, die du gestellt hast. Was hat es damit auf sich und wie wichtig ist es dir, gerade in einem Gespräch mit einem so hochrangigen, wichtigen Manager, auch nochmal eine zwischenmenschliche Ebene herzustellen?
Ja, ich hätte ihn nicht danach gefragt, wenn Satya Nadella nicht erstens in der Vergangenheit davon gesprochen hätte und zweitens wir das in den wenigen Minuten, die ich vor dem Interview mit ihm hatte, das nicht vorab erklärt hatten. Da habe ich ihn nämlich gefragt, ob das okay ist, weil es eine sehr persönliche Frage war. Es geht um seinen Sohn Zain Nadella, der ist geboren mit Zerebralparese, also einer Art Lähmung. Ich habe einen solchen Fall selbst in meinem engsten Familienkreis. Da kenne ich die Behinderung, die Erkrankung sehr gut. Und Satya Nadella berichtet davon ziemlich offen in seinem Buch, was er von seinem Sohn gelernt hat. Der hat zum Beispiel Musik geliebt. Der war locked in, also er konnte sich durch die Lähmung nicht gut verständigen und sie haben dann zum Beispiel über ganz frühe Formen Hirnstromenmessung versucht, mit ihm in Kontakt zu treten. Er hat Musik geliebt, er hat ihm Empathie beigebracht, so berichtet das Nadella in seinem Buch und hat ihm sozusagen eine neue Sicht auf die Welt eröffnet. Ich fand das ein sehr, sehr spannendes und ehrlich gesagt auch ein sehr wichtiges Thema. Und wir haben am Ende darüber gesprochen, was künstliche Intelligenz hier leisten kann, wie KI und wie Technologie unsere Gesellschaft inklusiver machen kann. Eine Gesellschaft, an der alle teilhaben können. Das ist ein Thema, das ist Satya Nadella wichtig. Das ist ein Thema, das ist auch mir und auch uns beim Handelsblatt sehr wichtig. Und er ist da tatsächlich für so jemanden in so einer Position, so einen Profi tatsächlich sehr persönlich geworden. Und ich muss sagen, ich hatte am Ende, und das ist keine Lüge, ich hatte am Ende tatsächlich einen kleinen Kloß im Hals, als ich das gehört habe.
Felix, wir hören gleich rein, was er dazu gesagt hat, was er zu den vielen spannenden anderen Fragen gesagt hat, die du ihm gestellt hast. Ich finde es an dieser Stelle unheimlich spannend, auch von dir zu hören, wie du deine Arbeit gestaltest, wie du dich vorbereitest. Ich glaube, das ist auch für unsere Hörerinnen und Hörer ganz wichtig zu verstehen, wie Journalismus eigentlich funktioniert. Also, herzlichen Dank für diesen Einsatz und wir hören jetzt rein. Bis bald.
Danke.
Wenn Sie wegen solcher Einblicke und Berichte jetzt über ein Handelsblatt-Abo nachdenken sollten, dann ist das Timing gut. Das Abo gibt es nämlich jetzt für 12 Monate mit 50% Rabatt. Gedruckt oder digital. Mit fundierten Recherchen, starken Meinungen und exklusiven Hintergründen behalten Sie den Überblick über die wichtigsten Wirtschaftsthemen. Das Aktionsangebot gilt bis zum 8. Dezember. Mehr Infos unter handelsblatt.com/podcast50. Und damit zum Gespräch von Felix Holtermann mit Satya Nadella, CEO von Microsoft.
Satya, many thanks for being here. Great to talk to you.
It's my pleasure, Felix.
Let's start with AI. Let's talk AI. So analysts, they estimate that the AI hyperscalers could invest over $500 billion in AI technology till 2026. AI is revolutionizing work and life. There are also some critical voices. For example, just yesterday, Google CEO Sundar Pichai called out the irrationality of the AI boom. He said that every company would be affected if the AI bubble were to burst. How would you describe the current situation? Are we in a bubble?
The way I think about these shifts, Felix, is from time to time in our own industry, we've had these every 10 years massive platform shifts, whether it was the PC, client server, web, internet, mobile, cloud. And now we have, at least in my own career, this is the fourth one that we are seeing. So the way at least I think about this is through the arc of that shift. And this shift, just like the cloud one, comes with both capital intensity and knowledge intensity, right? After all, the cloud wave also required us to build data centers and also do software innovation. And the AI one, in some sense, is more of a hyperdrive version of that. So I think the reality is for us all to keep that long-term arc and keep going. Because if you think about what's going to be true 5 years from now, right? Tech as a percentage of GDP in any country, Germany or in the United States or any place, is it going to be higher or lower? Absolutely higher. So once you say it's going to be higher, then you really should not worry too much about sort of what happens quarter over quarter. You have to be mindful that you want to make the investments in such a way that there is an ultimate return. But these are shifts that are secular in nature. They are economy-wide impact in nature. And so therefore, I think of this as I'm very, very optimistic about this trend. And ultimately, it has to deliver real value in the world, right? That I think is where the focus should be. And we see it already.
Your new Fairwater data center in Atlanta, right, has 10 times the performance of the world's largest supercomputer. It holds hundreds of thousands of NVIDIA chips. This year alone, Microsoft is investing more than $80 billion in AI. Talk about that a bit. Why is that necessary? When will this investment pay off? And, excuse the question, what happens if the bubble bursts to Microsoft and the economy?
Yeah. No, first of all, you also have to sort of not only look at our capital spend, but you also have to look at our free cash flow and our revenue, right? So in some sense, the only reason why we are able to spend that is because it's not future revenues. It's not about future free cash flow. It is Microsoft's ability to have existing businesses continue to scale. I mean, think about it, right? Our Azure business by itself is larger than all of Microsoft was, 10 years ago. I mean, so therefore, we already have, I would say, permission to invest as we sort of, and even AI revenues. In fact, Microsoft's pretty unique in that sense, even amongst the hyperscalers, is we are not talking about future AI revenues. We have at-scale AI revenues today, and that's what shows up in Azure growth rates. So the way I think about the ROIC or return from an investor perspective is pretty straightforward, right? Which is we are going to build out a very fungible fleet, right? If you look at even with Fairwater, we have Fairwater in Atlanta, we have Fairwater in Wisconsin. These are massive AI factories. We've even connected them with an AI van. They're also connected to all of our other regions in the United States. And so it's a fungible AI fleet, which will support training, will support inference and everything in between, like data generation and what have you. So we are really making sure that the asset here is something that will truly be helpful in the long run for the scale out of our revenue. And therefore, and that's why I think we are in good shape on the investment. The other thing I'd also mention is our portfolio. Not only is the fleet fungible, but even our portfolio, right? We have Copilot in consumer. We have Microsoft 365 Copilot. We have GitHub Copilot. We have DAX Copilot in healthcare. And security Copilot. So we have a family of Copilot products, a fungible fleet, and if you and a third-party business. So if you take those three, I feel like we have a very good mix of things that allow us to, make sure that there's a return and a real asset long-term.
In 1987, Nobel Prize winner Robert Solow said, speaking of real returns here, you can see the computer age everywhere but in the productivity statistics.
Yep.
Is that true for the AI age so far? And what has to happen?
I remember that quote very well because that was around the time I joined the computing industry. And guess what? In fact, the other critique of sort of technology and productivity has been Robert Gordon out of Northwestern as well. And in fact, if you look at even his book and his thing, fundamentally, productivity started showing up, or tech-driven productivity started showing up in the GDP in the early 2000s. And guess what? It was mostly because of the PC and the workplace. So PC in the workplace started the broad diffusion in the early 90s, right? It sort of developed in the 80s, late 80s, but really by the time of mid-90s is when it hit mainstream. And by 2000, it had, at least in the West, it had diffused and it showed up in the statistics. And I think the lesson I picked up then is these things first require to be broadly diffused, right? So people have to start using, right? I mean, you can't suddenly say, I used Excel once, where's my productivity? You have to use Excel and email and change the business process around forecasting in order for productivity to show up, right? So you think about it, it's not just the tool and its presence, it's your intense use of the tool. In fact, that's kind of where the reality is, which is this is where we really care about not just the technology. Right now, we're still in the hype phase of just talking about technology. We need to get into the phase where everybody is using, let's call it agentic models and tools and scaffolding to actually do something that they are proud of.
Let's talk about this AI future that's probably some years away. How will this technology change our lives, our work, our world, let's say in the next 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, if you take let's take one of the frontiers use cases, which is software development. If you look at even the arc of software development, right? I remember distinctly when I started developing software, first I learned, thank God I was sort of probably in the era after the punch cards, but I started on a PC, on a Z80, and it was all about, hey, you would write assembly. Or basic, right? I mean, but the bottom line is, I first learned assembly language. Then I learned, there were compilers came about, and then we got a level of abstraction, and I was able to write in a higher level language. Then, in fact, I remember distinctly, using Lex and Yak in school and building my own compiler for a fourth generation language. And so, bottom line is, we have had with every generation more and more abstractions, and now we have one more with GitHub Copilot. I'm still doing all the cognition and the metacognition with an AI agent. And so, for example, if I want to bootstrap into a new framework, it does the bootstrap. And I then do the steering. In fact, one of the descriptions I give is macro delegation and micro steering. That's the new interface, right? The way we'll work with AI as humans is that we're using that metaphor. So it'll impact everybody. I'll give you another use case. When you sort of go to a doctor today who's using DAX Copilot, what are they doing? They're spending more time with the patient and having DAX Copilot diarize their interaction, enter that into their EMR system, do the billing codes for them so that they can spend more time on thinking about the health outcomes for the patient. Security analyst, right? I'm sitting there, I'm getting all these false alerts or I'm getting all these alerts on phishing campaigns. AI does the triage, allows me to focus on the things that matter, right? So AI making its way into its everyday workflow and then giving, whether it's a doctor, a security analyst, a software developer, or a knowledge worker, levels of abstraction where we can start focusing on things that matter and getting not distracted. The drudgery of knowledge work, I think, is where the first phase is. And then, based on that, humankind has always been able to sort of figure out what are all the other new tasks. Suppose in the 80s, if somebody had come to us and said, you know what, there is going to be a great grand future where 3 billion people will get up every morning and start typing. We would have said, what are you talking about, right? I mean, this was in the pre-PC era, if someone had said that. But yet, knowledge work is what everyone does around the world. And so I think that that's the type of thing that will happen in the future.
Do you know what happened almost exactly 2 years ago on November 17, 2023?
November 17, 2023. Is that
quite busy?
This is the blip side of it. Yeah, I got it. Because I think November was when we did even ChatGPT the year before.
Exactly. So, yes. So we're talking about the ousting of Sam Altman by OpenAI's board. Satya, back then you stepped in and you had saved the shop, basically. That's at least what many observers are telling us. First, you did the turnaround of the century with Microsoft. You bet the company on the cloud. Tremendous success. Then you bet the company on OpenAI, a small startup. And there were some people that said, wow, Satya is betting the future of a company with 200,000 employees on a small startup in San Francisco. Were you afraid that weekend 2 years ago that you bet on the wrong horse?
Well, I mean, I must say that weekend, I mostly remember the outcome of a cricket match between India and Australia, which was not that great. But other than that, the best way to characterize it is, what I said to all parties then and what I say even today, right? At the end of the day, we I've grown up in a company that understands how to partner and partner well. I take that seriously. We had backed at that time, right? OpenAI was a research lab, a non-profit research lab, and we were very comfortable working with them. And so even during the November episode, let's call it, I was consistent with that, saying, hey, look, I am going to partner with OpenAI, and if something happens there, I'll partner with Sam, even inside or outside OpenAI. And I'm glad it ended well for all parties. And here we are, and OpenAI continues to thrive. So at least when I look at today, if I think back at it, Microsoft's partnership with OpenAI has created perhaps one of the most valuable private companies and one of the most valuable nonprofits. And next to the Gates Foundation now, I'm glad that Microsoft is associated with two of the largest nonprofits. And we continue to have a fantastic partnership between the two companies. And I'm also glad that they have other partners and we have other partners.
Your partners, you're also competitors to some extent. Frenemies, OpenAI opened its first office in Munich. It's also approaching German customers, also of Microsoft. There are some CTOs that told me in the past months, for example, that their employees prefer ChatGPT to Microsoft's Copilot, that it's just working better. Some of them even have an agreement with Microsoft and their employees privately use ChatGPT, not Copilot. What's your response?
Yeah, first of all, there's nothing taking away from ChatGPT's grand success, right? I mean, there's 800 plus million daily active users. So I think the way we have positioned ourselves is Copilot in the consumer space. We are pretty competitive in all where we have distribution and what have you. We're making steady progress. I'm thrilled about it. At the same time, acknowledging that both ChatGPT as well as Google have massive distribution in the consumer space. But for me, the fact that, this gives us another shot to be even in that is a fantastic opportunity. And then on the enterprise side, I feel very, very good about what is the unique thing we can do in the enterprise, right? The unique thing is not just about a chat interface to the web, right? The unique thing is to be able to do the union, right? And any person inside a German company who's already a Microsoft 365 customer, you want the context, the work IQ, as we call it, to meet the intelligence so that you can drive those productivity outcomes, right? Which is, there's no point just getting what the web knows. I need to know what my organization knows and the web knows to help me with my work in a differentiated way. And that is why Microsoft 365 Copilot is majorly differentiated.
Okay, let's see for the future. Then, speaking about helping me in my work, in my life, Microsoft was founded on a grand vision, right? A computer on every desk and in every home. As Bill Gates said, we achieved that. Congratulations. In your book, Hit Refresh, you also talk about technology empowering people all around the world. However, that sounds like a bright future, right? But however, if I listen to today's tech thought leaders, the future sounds rather gloomy, right? They now talk about the risk of human extinction thanks to AI, about AI taking over the world, AI-powered drugs and weapons and so on. Satya, why did tech turn so dark and how do you stay optimistic?
Look, some amount of, I'll say, clear-eyed understanding of any unintended consequence of any new technology is a good thing, right? So the fact that there is, because at some level, I think we go through these cycles where we are either just completely hyped up about or optimistic about a technology, or we are clearly, to your point, all sort of doomsday scenarios. I think sort of really being in the middle of the road, being an optimist at the core, but also dealing with the unintended consequences in a principled way, right? So, for example, take even the challenges of AI. That's why we have a digital safety board that both Microsoft and OpenAI jointly, in fact, administer for our, product launches, right? What's the purpose? The purpose is not to just talk infinitely about AI safety, but to exercise AI safety every step of the way and learn, right? Whether it is what is the way people will do prompt injections or what is the way something can be weaponized, right? Cyber is going to be one of the biggest challenges, right? With the great coding capabilities comes a tool that can be used as a weapon by somebody else. And so therefore you now need to even get our defenses up and so on. So I think the way to think about this is to not take away from the optimism, but to be realist enough that you are in fact treating it as an engineering priority, that you're building for the unintended consequences. So that's actually healthy for tech, because sometimes I think in the tech industry, we have been so optimistic that we said, oh, we'll come back and clean up. And I think that when something is so ubiquitous, so core to our life and our work, you really need to even think about this every step of the journey.
Let's talk about this optimistic or pessimistic worldview with regards to trade. Right now, it seems like the world is not coming together, but drifting apart, right? In your book, Hit Refresh, you stress the importance of free trade. Now we see growing protectionism. We see it in Washington. We see it around the world. How do you navigate this environment? How does it affect your business?
I think the way I think about it, as in some sense, as a multinational company, is at the end of the day, you do have to ground yourself that your license to operate, our license to operate, comes from really creating local surplus, right, in Germany or in the United States, because it's not like we should get a license if we're not helping a small business or a middle-start company become globally more competitive, or the German public sector become more efficient, health outcomes, education outcomes, a large multinational like Daimler that we work so closely with, doing a great job around the world. So to me, at the end of the day, I think every country is going to be most focused on what is it that they can do to help their citizens and their companies make progress. They will think about their supply chains. They'll think about sort of anybody coming into their country through that lens. And that's a healthy thing, right? So globalization in the past did a lot of great things, but it also had impact in all of these societies. And I think that's what's really being litigated right now. And so for multinationals, we have to adjust to that, right? We can't go back and say, hey, what we were used to is the only thing that matters. In fact, if anything, we have to be competitive and we have to rethink our supply chains. Like, for example, think about this. Microsoft is one of the largest capital investors in Germany, in Europe, right? Because we're putting, and more so than ever.
You're building a lot of data centers right now in the Rhineland, for example.
Exactly. And so we're putting our capital at risk. We're making the investments because ultimately those tokens and that cloud computing will translate into German competitiveness. And so to me, hopefully, and to me, that is the key goal, right? If we are going to parlay our competence and our capability and our investment into local surplus, then I think everything works out.
Nach einer kurzen Unterbrechung geht es gleich weiter. Bleiben Sie dran.
We're living in a rapidly changing world, and now more than ever, Europe needs to define its future. Global markets have become battlegrounds, and feels like AI, biotech, digital sovereignty, security and space exploration will mean the difference between success and failure. These themes stand at the core of tech, Europe's hub for innovation and collaboration. From the 31st of May to the 2nd of June 2026, Handelsblatt, the Handelsblatt Media Group and Schwarz Digits will welcome leading minds to Heilbronn. Find out more at tech-europe.org.
You are a product of globalization. Being here, me too, actually. You talk in your book also about your experiences as a first-generation immigrant from India. And you write, we are at our best when we actively seek diversity and inclusion, right? The new US government under Donald Trump has called for an end to diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, for example. Doesn't that go against everything you stand for as a person and as a manager?
No, I think, first of all, I think the United States, as you rightfully pointed out, has been an unbelievable place for us. For me, as a first-generation immigrant, I mean, I always say I'm a product of two unbelievable things, right? The first is American technology reaching me where I was growing up, and then the immigration policies that let me come here and really work in this industry and what have you. So I think, yes, at the end of the day, it is about, I think most people talk about this as diversity and inclusion and meritocracy democracy as somehow being at odds. I don't think so. I actually think fundamentally it is about really ensuring that you have a meritocratic society by ensuring that you're not overlooking the talent that is there here and the talent that we may need. And so I think that each country will have to sort of come up with their own set of policies. But I must say, I was lucky enough to come to the US, lucky enough to find a spot in an industry like this that made it feel that I belonged. And I think that's what matters.
Germany is an important market for Microsoft. We have many political discussions right now about the right future for the country. How do you see Germany?
I always think about, when somebody says, as an engineer, Germany, what do you say? Engineering, right? I mean, German engineering is sort of one of the modern wonders of the world, right? Even it's not even when I go to the dentist office in Bellevue, Washington, a few miles from here, I'm surrounded by the German Mittelstand, right? I mean, it's sort of that precision engineering, the equipment. And to me, I think Germany has a tremendous opportunity going forward in being able to, for example, to me, the virtuous cycle would go something like this, right? American tech like ours comes into Germany. We put it into these, clouded AI factories. They get used by a German Mittelstand company. In fact, Siemens is a great example. What they've just recently done with sort of building into their solutions.
Or Mercedes-Benz and the cars.
Mercedes-Benz, Siemens are really incorporating all of this technology. And guess what? We are customers of all of those technologies in the United States and everywhere else in the world, right? So that ability to take an input, add your unique value, and export it to the world, that is comparative advantage, right? Ricardo was not wrong. And so to some degree, we have to now rethink the value creation, right? Because the value creation of engineering even now is not just the old engineering, it's the engineering plus digital. But it's like saying it's electrical, like everything is digital, right? When you are driving a Mercedes-Benz car or you're using Siemens equipment in our data centers, by the way, is it an industrial equipment or is it a digital equipment? I mean, those lines are blurring. So I think Germany has a tremendous opportunity.
But there's one question that I'm getting a lot lately. Many German companies are a bit worried, for example, the case with the ICC, the International Criminal Court, right? Microsoft had to follow a government order, right? You had to suspend some accounts there. Do you fear that cases like this might come up more often in the future? Is that a problem?
I think that's one of the fundamental reasons why we have committed to the sovereignty, right? The sovereignty investments we have made, whether it's on the EU data boundary or the German sovereign cloud that we are building, whether it is the sovereign services on public cloud we have, and even our legal stance, right? All of that should give guarantees to anyone that at the end of the day, they have the sovereignty they need and the continuity they need. And also remember, German companies are also subject to laws in the United States when they operate in the United States, right? So therefore, I think at the end of the day, these will all settle because it's not about any one country taking action against another country. All countries will need to have norms that govern how they work with each other. And that will, I think, be the case even in the digital world.
Lastly, I would love to ask you a personal question. Zain, your son, was born with cerebral palsy, like one of my cousins. You have spoken about him in the past, his love for music and how he taught you empathy. Zain passed away 3 years ago. What future technology would you have liked him to see, and how can we ensure that AI is inclusive, a technology accessible to all?
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. One of my daughters was telling me when we launched Copilot, and we have this new character in Copilot called Miko. And she just mentioned because he loved Nemo and he loved Ice Age and what have you. And so therefore we were thinking, he would have loved Miko. I'm glad you reminded me of that. I think, when I look at accessibility, right, it's a fascinating thing. The way even I started at Microsoft, we used to think of this as a thing. You build a product, and then you have AT, right? That used to be accessibility. It was an add-on. Mm-hmm. thanks to sort of the progress of technology, and also I'd say design, right? Because even universal design, combined with the technical capabilities that we now have, right? Like a multimodal model is just the most accessible by design technology ever produced. Because the modality doesn't matter and you can transform anything to anything. I mean, think about the power, right? And even the human interface technologies, right? We are at the cusp of even one of the projects I remember working alongside my daughter was to say, can we, because my son was locked in, we used to have a dry cap and we used to try and collect electrical signals, try and see if we can communicate, right? I think, even I look at the progress being made by many folks around BMI. So I'm very hopeful that computing as a force for universal inclusion will be one of the things that this technology wave will be remembered for. So I'm a big optimist in that.
I think we should end on that. Thank you very much, Satya, for your time today.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure.
Und das war's für heute mit Handelsblatt Disrupt. Redaktion Larissa Holzki, Produktion Migo Fecke. Lob, Kritik und Anregungen können Sie mir per E-Mail oder auf LinkedIn schicken. Details dazu finden Sie in den Shownotes. Die nächste Folge von Disrupt kommt wie gewohnt am Freitag. Ich wünsche Ihnen bis dahin eine gute Zeit. Ihre Larissa Holzki.